Welcome to the PCN Capitol Preview. I'm Larry Casper. Today we're going to talk about the PA Senate legislative agenda. But first we're joined by Maddie Aiken, reporter for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Welcome, Maddie.
Thanks for having me.
The state budget is 4 months overdue, and you filed a story about the consequences for college students at the state-related and state-owned schools. Tell us what's happening there.
Yeah, so basically on the university level, you have any of the public universities, that's going to include the state-owned PASHE schools like Millersville and Slippery Rock, as well as the state-related schools like Pitt and Penn State. They're waiting on millions of dollars in funding. That's really vital to provide tuition discounts for their in-state students. But then on the personal student level, you also have about 100,000 Pennsylvania resident students who are waiting on their FIA grants right now. So those are usually on average about $2,000 per semester, and those are grants from the state that need to be passed through the budget so that the students are able to get those grants.
Maddie, let's talk about those FIA grants. Just how important are they to the students who receive them and who want to continue their education?
It's definitely going to depend on the individual student, but obviously, students need to qualify for these grants based on their need. And for students who are obviously college tuition is expensive, and even if you get a $2,000 grant a semester, if you're counting on that and now it's a bit delayed, that can really make you have to look and maybe readjust your spending plans for that semester.
Let's talk more about FIA. That's the acronym for Grants for Students. And let's talk about the role they play right now while students are waiting for these grants to come through.
Yeah. So right now they are advising students to reach out to their universities, if they are very impacted by this delay in their grants, just to discuss the impact of the hold. In the case of many of these universities, though, I know that Penn State said they're holding recipients harmless right now until the funding is released. And the PASHE schools said they're giving grace to impacted students, to make sure that there aren't any kind of hurdles or, big impacts in their current semester.
I'm guessing, Maddie, there must be anxiety from some students in this situation. So what specific advice is FIA giving students who are really concerned about these grants?
Yeah. So they're advising them to reach out right now to their universities. And, if that they are in, a financial constraint right now, just to reach out to their university administrators and talk about how they can ensure that they're able to pay their tuition bills this semester. And I will add that it's not just students at the public universities that receive FIA grants. Students at the independent and private colleges can also qualify for those grants.
Are state system schools hoping for a raise on top of their usual appropriation whenever it does come through?
Yes, so they have requested a 6.5% increase in their appropriation from last year. But actually, when they decided what tuition was going to be for this upcoming year, they assumed that they weren't going to get that increase. But if state legislators do decide to give them that 6.5% bump, then PASHE students will actually see their tuition rates fall next semester.
Is the budget impasse in general causing any inconvenience for students right now? This is beside the grants we've been talking about.
I think that the grants is the main impact right now.
And as far as the future is concerned, is there any light at the end of the tunnel for these students? Now, as you pointed, Penn State University wants to hold their students harmless. In other words, they're going to forgive them this lack of grants, at least for now.
Yeah, I think the hope right now is just that legislators are able to come together and iron out the budget, and then obviously the students will, receive these grants. So I think that's kind of where administrators are looking right now.
Are you planning any kind of follow-up on this story, Maddie? What do you think is going to happen next?
I think definitely, as we see the budget process move forward, it will definitely be interesting to see whether in addition to the PASHE schools, some of the state relateds have also asked for increases in funding. So that definitely be interesting to see, whether they do get those increases. And then obviously if the budget impasse continues, it will be, interesting to look into next semester how that's continuing to impact the universities. The PASHE schools are already having to pull from their reserves. Pitt, I think, said they're at about a $50 million loss right now. So it will be, important to look at how this continues to impact them.
Thank you very much, Maddie Aiken from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Thank you for having me.
More of the PCN Capitol Preview after a short break. Welcome back. Our guests today are Senator James Malone, a Democrat from Lancaster County, and Senator Cameron Bartolotta, a Republican from Washington, Beaver, and Greene counties. Senator Bartolotta, we're going to start with you. The state budget is 4 months overdue. The Senate passed a $47.9 billion budget. That's about $3.5 billion less than the governor proposed. What does this tell you about the state of negotiations?
Well, the Senate passed a budget back on August the 12th. So it wasn't 4 months late then. And what that budget did was, call it a continuing resolution, if you will, which just keeps the doors open, keeps the money flowing to all of those entities that we're responsible for, our schools, our hospitals, our nursing homes, all of those things. And we passed it on August the 12th and sent it over to the House, and it didn't move past the Appropriations Committee. Didn't even go through there. And then just the other day, we passed it yet again back to the House. This time we added $300 million to it because we want to cover the debt service on those important issues. Also, to make sure that we're paying for our rape crisis centers and things like that. Plus, within that budget bill we sent over, we reduced some of the line item spending for the legislature. So we're cutting our costs, but also covering our responsibilities. So hopefully something will be accomplished with that, but it is far too long to be waiting for people to come to the table and make a decision and think about the 13 million Pennsylvanians out there who desperately need a budget to be passed so that they're not suffering. And I have a lot of food banks that are out of food. I've got some schools that have borrowed. It's a crisis point, and we've got to bring it to an end.
Senator Malone, given these developments that were just explained by Senator Bartolotta, what do you think of the status of negotiations?
Oh, I think that, everybody is definitely trying to get what they want out of it. I know for me personally, I'd like us to see rates that at least cover the increases in all of the costs that we've had. I'd like to see, some actual increases. Senator Bartolotta mentioned the rape crisis, and that's been flat funded for years, even though it's needed significantly more funding. And of course, before our time, but we have a chance now. I think everybody to actually put in some changes that would at least meet current expenses. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at.
Senator Malone, keep the floor just for a moment, because I want you to consider a remark that Senator Jay Costa, the minority leader in the Senate, made. He said about budget negotiations, right to the point, he said, we're regressing. That sounds like he thinks it's going backwards instead of forwards. What do you think?
Well, I mean, if we're flat funding at 2024 levels, we would be, pulling things farther and farther back, right? Because we are retracting. Now, as far as, the 5 or 6 people that are in a room trying to work something out, from what I've heard, they're not calling each other gross names and what have you, as they did in the past. So I guess, there is some civility there. But the big thing is, we do need to get a budget passed that does cover, the costs that, we need to cover, rather than trying to, bare bonus constantly to all of our constituents. So,
Senator Bartolotta, you heard what Senator Malone said about the budget being flat funded, in the sense that it's about the same as last year, and what do you take out of that as far as how the budget should finally turn out? Is it progress? Is it the way it should be? What do you think?
Well, I do know we had a meeting of the majority leaders, the minority leaders in both the Senate and the House yesterday, and that went on for a good while. And I hear that they're meeting again today. I'm not sure what that means. And even in our caucus, not a lot was shared about what was discussed. So I think right now, I'm hoping that that is a good sign that finally we've got all of the leaders, except of course for the governor. I'm not even sure if he was there yesterday. So, we need to get everyone to the table who are responsible for hammering out those decisions to finalize the budget. And I'm hoping today that we have some good news and that we're moving forward on the things that are important. And again, it may be flat funded, but at least it's funded. At least the money would be pushed out. We could have done this on August 12th. We could have prevented.
Well, I mean, honestly, it should have been done June 15th.
June 30th is the cutoff day. But
I understand. That's why it should have been done June 15th. Anyway.
Well, and again, this is the third year for Josh Shapiro in office, and it's his third late budget. And you need to have a governor who's in the room to be a leader. And the leaders need to be able to come to the table and say, put partisanship aside and say, okay, this is, and I owned a business for 31 years. What you do with a budget as a householder or anybody who pays their bills, a business owner, you find out, okay, this is what I have coming in anticipated. Here's the revenue I have anticipated, right, for next year. Here are my anticipated expenses. And this is how much I should put away for a rainy day. This is how much I should put in savings to pay down my debt, better my credit score, any of those things. Those are three things that people need to talk about. But for some reason, with the Pennsylvania budget, we start with a pie in the sky number that, okay, this is what we want to spend. Now, how do we get there? Mm-hmm. To anyone who's owned a business or run a household, that is completely backwards. I don't understand that at all. I think we can do it a lot better.
Senator Bartolotta, let's look at it this way. How are Republicans justifying this latest proposal, this budget that was passed by the Senate?
Well, because I guess we can't come to any other agreements at the bargaining table with the leadership. Mm-hmm. So this is at least an attempt to get some of that money pushed out, mm-hmm. because there are a lot of people hurting. There are people hurting in Pennsylvania. They can't pay their bills. Prices are high. Energy prices are extremely high. For a big reason that we've got Reggie hanging over our heads, but that's further down the line in our conversations. So I think what we have to do is push the money out, pay our bills, make sure that the citizens of Pennsylvania are whole for now, and then let's come back to the table and arm wrestle for the rest of the 10%.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's expand on that, Senator Bartolotta. As far as arm wrestling is concerned, and this question is for Senator Malone, your colleague, Senator Santasero, said the problem with the proposal is education and health care funding. Senator Malone, how do you feel about your colleagues singling out those concerns?
I mean, there are big expenses that we are supposed to meet. So I think that is legitimate to bring it up and to actually talk about it. For better or worse, we have to decide whether we are going to fund those, whether we owe that to our constituents all the way across the state or not. And we need to honestly have those conversations.
Senator Bartolotta, what do you think of that assessment by Senator Santasero? He says education and health care is the problem with this current budget. What do you say?
Well, I know that every year we're adding more and more and more to education, and I get it, but let's make sure those dollars are producing the results we want them to produce. We have children in many of our school districts, and at Philadelphia School District, for example, I mean, some of these kids aren't reading proficiently at the grade level they should be. So we need to make sure that the dollars are equaling results. And we have to do better than that. We can't just keep pouring more and more and more money at a situation when in the past it hasn't given us the results that we want. So I think what we need to focus on is educating our kids, making sure that they're in safe schools with the proper resources. And I mean, every single kid in Pennsylvania should have the same kind of education, not just based on what your zip code is. And that's been a problem in my district. I have very, very, very rural school districts. I have some high schools that graduated 34 kids or 60 kids, very, very, very small. Our population is dwindling. Our costs are rising. And we really need to take a look at how we can budget efficiently, push out the funding fairly to all of our school districts, but still get the results we need. We need to educate our kids and not just keep throwing money at school districts.
Senator Malone, let's try to consider the consequences of this budget impasse. In other words, how are the counties in your district getting by while they're waiting for their appropriation?
I mean, the truth is that they're not. We have, my county is in my district, Lancaster County. We're cutting off services. We're not paying full reimbursements in October. We're not paying any reimbursements in November. It's not a good scene. We have individuals who are, early child care centers that are owed well over $80,000 for services rendered. We have I'm just one that's always stuck in my head is a fellow that talked to me last week, who's who's lost around $400,000 right now of unreimbursed, and he can't pay his employees. So, it is a huge problem, and it's and I come from an IT field, so for me, all of the statements about people in a room and stuff, I feel like all of that is really ridiculous because we have phones, we have Zoom, we have, take a few minutes, even if you're driving in the car, and have a conversation and move things forward across the board. But that's just me. I honestly believe that we ought to get this done. And we have had a proposal from the House multiple times. We actually deliberately rolled back the print number on the proposal and the amendment rather than, doing something that was somewhere in between. And, I just think that that's extremely problematic, and it's definitely not a compromise point to, to stand up and say, well, we'll do exactly what we said before and not move. And unfortunately, and I don't believe that it's everybody in the Senate Republican Party, but that is what has happened routinely. So, who knows where this is going to end. But I do think that we really need to come back, actually have a compromise, and move this forward, so.
Senator Bartolotta, let's consider consequences of the budget impasse in your legislative district. And after all, you represent several counties, so how are they getting by? What's going on there?
Well, I think that many of them are, I think they're getting used to having a budget impasse, unfortunately. So I haven't really heard a lot from our municipalities that have said, oh, we're hurting. I know that they are. I know that they're really tightening their belts, and they've been really, really efficient with their funding and what they have in reserves. But it gets to a point where we don't want our counties and our services to have to borrow money, because then they're stuck with the interest on that borrowing. So, I was gratified to see that Treasurer Stacey Garrity had made a proposal to at least push some funding out. She said there's $500 million that could be used, and some have taken advantage of that opportunity so that we can fund Head Start, some pre-Ks, the rape crisis centers, and some municipalities. So, and they should not have to pay interest on funding that they should have had already. So this is something that we've been discussing. This is actually something we voted on, so that we had to make a bill so that there wouldn't be a interest rate on that lending. And so far, some have taken advantage of it. But I think everybody's just gotten so used to, oh, let's prepare for a budget impasse. And that's the whole point of saving for a rainy day, just like our rainy day fund. We can't just tap into it and suck all the money out of that whenever we decide that we're going to spend more than we bring in.
Senator Bartolotta, let's get back to Treasurer Garrity's loan program that you just brought up a minute ago. As far as you can tell, how much interest is there from the counties in your district in borrowing this money?
Well, some of them haven't even tapped into that possibility because we're still sort of haranguing with it. But the municipalities are the ones that would be, the counties would be the ones that would be able to tap in. But right now, I haven't heard from any of my municipalities that have taken advantage of that. Some head starts and things like that, a few. I don't think a lot of people are jumping on board right now because they're not quite sure, is it going to be interest free? Is it going to be 4.5? Is it going to be 7? So, right now, I think we're getting to the boiling point. We're getting to the boiling point, and I'm really hoping that this week we can get the budget done, push those funds out, and fulfill our obligation. Let me go back 1 second, just for just a second, to the school funding. In the last 4 years, we've increased education funding by $4.1 billion, even though the student rates have gone down. Graduating classes are smaller, but to the medical costs, I don't think we really touched on the medical costs all that much. Our Medicaid funding is just out of this world. It is increased by $5 billion over the last 7 years. We haven't increased the reimbursement rate for Medicaid in Pennsylvania in 20 years? It's incredibly difficult to get care providers in those locations when they're making less than they'd be making at McDonald's. It's a real issue. Our medical care needs to be addressed. And we just spoke with, I just had a meeting yesterday with HAP, the Hospital Association of Pennsylvania, and they have been juggling like circus clowns trying to figure this out. And luckily now that they've got a couple of people in there who have business backgrounds and then finance backgrounds, and they can look at a balance sheet and their eyes pop out and say, how in the heck has this happened over these years, where the costs have just skyrocketed. So we've got to address a lot of that. There are a lot of moving pieces, and we need to address as many as we can, as quickly as we can, to bring down costs that are exploding in the medical field. So those were discussions I had just yesterday.
Senator Malone, even though Senator Bartolotta says the details have to be worked out about the Treasurer's loan program, have you heard about any interest in your legislative district to borrow this money with the fate of the interest notwithstanding still pending at this point?
Well, it's currently by invitation only. So, people, I have been asking, hey, did you get an invite to this? Have you looked at the details? And they haven't gotten the invites and they haven't gotten details. So those are both problems. Additionally, there's still questions as to whether or not it's legal. So what happens if we, take it and then find out that, it was problematic to begin with, and then what's the result? So there's a bunch of questions in that as well. I did want to circle back as well. We do have a bipartisan option from the House. We do have our, Senate. We could come up with something in the middle, something halfway. I know everybody and their dog is waiting for, whoever the 5 people in the room to do something, but we're all individuals. We're all called forward to serve our constituents. Let's put something on the floor that we can, more than just one party agree on and move forward. Or let's just, take the House and, talk about dropping it, 3% or whatever. But let's actually do something rather than sticking in the ground. I also do want to point out Senator Bartolotta's point about, getting the education program set. I know she called up Philadelphia, but we also have charter schools, private schools, and, regular public education across the state where kids are not meeting their standards. Maybe that's personnel numbers. Maybe those are things that getting those fundings put in would actually be helpful. And, we also have a serious problem with the expenses in public schools skyrocketing as charter schools and cyber schools handpick who they want to take on and then recharge our schools exorbitant rates for those. So there's a lot there that we can deal with as well. And I completely agree with the medical stuff. We absolutely need to figure that out. And, we have a constantly aging population. We have awesome elder care programs, and we absolutely need to, figure out how to increase those reimbursement rates for our medical professionals. But anyway.
All right, before we go on to our next subject, Senators Bartolotta and Malone, I'm going to give you a break just for a minute while we look at program notes for PCN. On the Issues has 3 more candidates running in November's election for you to meet on Wednesday. Daniel Wasmer, Liberal Party candidate for PA Superior Court at 7 p.m. David Wecht, Democrat for retention on PA Supreme Court at 7:30 p.m. And Christine Donahue, also a Democrat for retention on PA Supreme Court at 8 p.m. They'll be here on Wednesday evening. A journalist roundtable will have Katie Bernard from the Philadelphia Inquirer, Mario Serino from the Philadelphia Tribune, and Stephen Caruso, Capitol reporter with Spotlight PA. They'll tell us the latest news about the November general election Thursday at 7 p.m. Now on to the history and culture side of programming. You've probably seen the famous portrait of Washington crossing the Delaware. One of the men on that boat is Edward Hand, George Washington's adjutant general, a former resident of Lancaster County. We'll talk about him tonight at 8 p.m. Every year, Harrisburg hosts the Pennsylvania Farm Show. Here's a flashback from this year's show. It's a fashion show they hold with competitors of different ages, making and modeling garments that fit into different categories. That's on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. And on to sports, the PIAA Boys and Girls Golf Championships from State College. We'll show you action from the 2A and 3A finals for individuals on Friday at 7 p.m. You can watch this show and all our public affairs programming free of charge by visiting PCNSelect.com. And while you're there, you can download our streaming service, PCN Select. PCN is Everything Pennsylvania. We're a 501c3 nonprofit television network that relies on viewers like you. To make a donation, visit PCNTV.com. All right, we're going to continue to talk about legislative priorities with our guests, Senator Bartolotta and Senator Malone. And Senator Malone, I'm going to change the subject from the budget in general to a subject that's somewhat related to the budget because the governor never fails to bring this up during his annual budget speech, and that's the prospect of raising the minimum wage. He wants to raise it. Where does it stand right now? And tell us briefly what you'd like to see happen. Senator Malone.
Well, I mean, I would like to see it increase to something that's comparable in current dollars to where it was then, right? So I think that would, I did the math sets and I double checked a few places. I think that would be anywhere between $13 and $15 an hour. Mm-hmm. And look, I mean, for me, I grew up doing a ton of work and jobs. I've, installed windows. I've repaired screens, I've roofed houses, I've scrubbed grease wells, cleaned stuff, worked as short order cook. There's a ton of work out there to be done. And to make ends meet, when I was growing up and going through things, I'd work 4 and 5 different jobs at these, $2 and $3 and $4 an hour sets to be able to cover stuff. And frankly, having that experience, I would really like to actually honor folks that are doing hard work, that are working, heavy 40-hour jobs, and make sure that they only need that one job to kind of pull through and make a bare minimum. So that's why I, am supportive of raising the minimum wage.
Senator Bartolotta, tell us where you stand briefly on minimum wage. What would you like to see happen?
Well, back in 2016, I voted to increase the minimum wage because that was the bill that Scott Wagner, at the time, senator, had proposed way back in 2016, I think it was. And if we had the House pass that bill, it would have been, had it been an increase, I think 50 cents an hour, like every 6 months. And years ago, it would have been up to $10.50 an hour already. But it went to the House and it died there because, well, that's not enough. Well, again, don't kill the possible for the perfect, or whatever the phrase is, but it would have been raised by now. My concern is that things are so different in the Southwest as compared to even Allegheny County or Philadelphia, things like that. The costs are such a range that in let's say in Monongahela, you can have a job at about $9.50 an hour if you're a young person, in high school, or if you're someone who's retired and you're looking just to fill the accounts a little bit for something special. You can work at those rates, and again, no one in Pennsylvania is living and raising a family on $7.25 an hour. I don't think you can find a job at $7.25 an hour. I don't think they exist. People, I was chair of labor and industry for 4 years. I'm now vice chair. In all those 4 years, every employer I heard from said we can't staff our businesses. People can't get people to work. And it's really unfortunate because there are tons of jobs out there and they're all paying a heck of a lot more than minimum wage. Many are paying $15 and up, trying to get people to come in. But my concern with the minimum wage going, doubling overnight would be our nonprofits. We have to make sure that we're not crushing our nonprofits because they rely on whatever the minimum wage rate is for their operations, and we can't literally have it backfire on us because we need to provide a lot of those services to people who desperately need them. And if we jump and double the minimum wage rate, we may end up crushing a lot of those programs that those people rely on the most.
Senator Bartolotta, data centers are coming to Pennsylvania, and you have a bill that addresses their environmental impact. Explain it to us.
Certainly. The bill that I'm working on actually mirrors a bill in the House, and what it would do is be able to set up the parameters and basically package those permits that are most typically used in preparing for a data center. And we have numerous sites in Pennsylvania that would be ideal for a data center or AI center to locate, because it would have, it's close to energy, either a current or a shuttered energy producer, a coal-fired power plant, gas-fired power plant, any of those things, close to water, close to all those things. And what it would do is package those permits ahead of time and give it a fast track so that we're not waiting for years, literally, to get the permits needed to take advantage of this booming opportunity. Even John Shapiro has said, we want Pennsylvania to be the AI capital of the nation. Fine. You can't do it if you have businesses waiting 12, 18, 24 months to get the permits needed to establish those. We will lose the race if we have to wait for all of those permits. This doesn't eliminate regulation. This doesn't eliminate the need for permits. This puts it on a fast track and makes things a lot easier and more streamlined so that we can take advantage of this technology before it's gone.
Well, Senator, let's say a data center does accelerate their permit process and they get it in a fraction of the usual time they would expect. What can the data centers do to ensure a better environmental outcome? Isn't that part of your bill?
It absolutely is. Yes, they have to meet or exceed the highest standards for environmental regulations, and they can use third-party review. They can use everything that's on the table for them to proceed in a very safe and effective way. So this would work with the DEP hand in hand, following every regulation, exceeding or meeting the highest standards, and ensuring air quality, water quality, all of those needs are met, all the regulations are met, but in a more efficient and timely fashion. And this also provides the opportunity for those entities, data centers, AI centers, to use behind the grid energy production, which would not add a burden to the grid right now, right? We can't handle what we have already. We absolutely must create more energy producers in Pennsylvania just for what we have before AI and data centers. So this would allow behind the grid so they produce their own energy and not be a burden to the grid.
And last question on this subject, Senator, tell us briefly what the anticipated environmental impact is from the proliferation of data centers. For example, I know they can use a lot of water.
Yes. Well, actually, a lot of these data centers are, and technology, the supersedes itself almost overnight these days. Many of these are pulling fresh water to cool these data centers, especially AI. They generate a lot of heat because they use a lot of energy. They need the water for cooling. But a lot of them are going to be using closed loop recycling water so that they're not pulling it from fresh water sources. But they can also use other sources of water, untreated water and things like that for cooling. Some of them, it's more expensive to do so if they're not near a water source. They use a chemical, glycolic acid, glycol, almost like a radiator, if you would, for cooling. It's more expensive, but it's efficient, and it just pulls the heat from these things. But again, as technology progresses, we know just because the calculators we use today could have launched the space shuttle years ago, right? So you see these massive acres of data centers. Maybe in 5-10 years, they're going to be much, 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 much smaller. But guess what? Those areas will still have the energy producing that they're going to need today. So all of that energy could be put back onto our grid in the future. It's a win-win.
Senator Malone, let's talk about a bill you're working on. There's currently a law that requires school personnel to report suspected child abuse. You want to expand that law to include certain specific images generated by AI. Tell us about that.
Sure, and just to clarify, it's not just AI. It's any image, right, that is an intimate image of a minor. And specifically, we're adding that into the child-on-child contact item, specifically because it was not there, and we had an adult in the room where an incident occurred, and they chose not to report. And then by the time it was found, it reached out to 50 people total, 47 at that particular school. And the obviously, mature adults across the area would find this heinous, but the adult in the room fell back on, well, it's not in the mandatory reporting. Mm-hmm. So, literally, we're just adding it in so that specifically the hope is, of course, that this will be an immediate response for somebody that gets a mandatory reporting. They'll know, oh, yeah, I really do need to recall this. And then also the next time somebody chooses to be so heinous, the district attorney will have teeth to go after them for this kind of ridiculous behavior.
The images that were generated in the Lancaster case, were they artificially generated?
Yes, absolutely.
And what happened to the school officials who failed to report this suspected abuse?
They were eventually dismissed, but they did not get, charged for this behavior.
Senator Bartolotta, let's go back to you and consider a bill you're working on. It has to do with the impact fee here in Pennsylvania, which is paid by natural gas and oil drillers. And tell us briefly first what the impact fee pays for.
Certainly. Impact fee, it's basically a tax. but it was created by Governor Tom Corbett, who said no new taxes, so he couldn't call it a tax. It's a fee. And what it does is the gas industry, when they drill a well, they pay a fee for the municipality where the impact is being felt. So when you have different trucks, sand trucks, water trucks, creating some traffic and using the roads to create the drilling pad, the drilling unit, and then after it's produced, there's no traffic. So during that period of time, which is maybe 9 to 12 months or so, you really feel the impact of it every time there's a well drilled. Impact fee pays, actually, my district has received hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars since the innovation of gas drilling, fracking in southwestern Pennsylvania. It has relieved so much pressure on the taxpayers for all sorts of things. It pays for some housing, it pays for trucks, it pays for fire trucks and plows and just a myriad of things. It's called Act 13, and it's been incredibly beneficial. So those are the fees that are paid when an area feels the impact of drilling. My bill basically says that if you are a municipal leader and you choose to eliminate drilling from your municipality, okay, you're not feeling the impact of the industry there, so you shouldn't receive that impact fee. So I liken it, because I'm a mom and I'm a grandma, I liken it to the little story of the little red hen. Who's going to help me plant the wheat? Not I, said the cow. Not I, said the pig. Not I, said the cow. So it goes on. And at the very end, when she's baked the bread, who's going to help me eat the bread? I will, I will, I will. No, it doesn't work that way. So if you refuse to participate in the industry at all in your municipality, the impact fee should not be paid to that municipality. It should be distributed to those where the impact is being felt. That's the nature of the bill.
We have a few minutes left in our program, Senator Malone, and I want you to talk about a bill you're working on that has to do with banning gifts to elected officials. Tell us about that.
Sure. So it's a companion bill to Representative Solomon's bill in the House. And the idea and hope is to provide some additional level of trust. So many times, whether joking or slightly serious or just sarcastic, we hear from constituents that, they don't have enough money to be a voice in government. And, obviously that should not be the case at all. We're constantly trying to deal with that perception. And what this would do is, flatline that special interest gifts, right? Like right now, if you wanted to give Senator Bartolotta and I, $50,000, you could do it. All we have to do is state, next year at the beginning to state, oh, we got $50,000 from, PNC or PCN. My apologies. So this is just to level it down, to make it a very small, like $50. Anything over that, you're just not going to have it. It doesn't answer campaign issues, anything else. It literally is just talking about official gifts. And, there is, I think, some very logical variant in there so that, if you're going to a meal and it's specifically about, your committee work, and it's not, a lobbyist trying to buy a way in, then, it's not an issue. But anyway, the whole goal is to start to try to rebuild that trust that we're about serving our constituents rather than the money. And we're only a few states that still don't have anything. So I think kind of it helps level the field. But that's the attempt.
Well, Senator, my understanding of the bill is that it restricts gifts of no more than $50 from a single source. A single source, I think, is the key, because that begs the question, I think, is there anything stopping public officials from accepting hundreds of dollars from multiple sources?
Well, no. I mean, that would be another bill altogether, right? That would be another restriction. To Senator Bartolotta's point earlier, don't throw out the good for the sake of the perfect, right? So, yeah, it's a start, but it certainly doesn't answer all the questions,
Senator Bartolotta, I think we have time for one more subject. This has to do with veteran-owned businesses, and I understand the Senate passed a bill that promotes them, and we only have a minute left, so try to tell us about it.
Quick. Absolutely. It's a veterans logo bill. And a lot of people, when they go shopping or looking for businesses to support, you'll see, Better Business Bureau or the AAA, the Automobile Association endorses this or whatever. This bill, the logo bill, basically says that the Department of Veterans Affairs will create a logo that veteran-owned, it's got to be 51% or more veteran-owned business, can display, use on their websites, use on their marketing material. So it identifies them as a veteran-owned business. Our veterans have worked so hard. They have dedicated themselves. They have sacrificed so much. And so many of them put their careers or education on the sidelines to protect our liberty and democracy. So we owe it to them to help them when they become entrepreneurs. So this identifies them as a veteran-owned business, and I certainly hope that people will take advantage of supporting those people who sacrificed for us. So I was thrilled when that logo bill passed.
Senator James Malone and Senator Camera Bartolotta, thank you for appearing on our program today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
PCN's Francine Schertzer talked to Senator Amanda Cappelletti about providing bereavement leave when a baby is lost during pregnancy.
We're joined today by Senator Amanda Cappelletti. You're sponsoring legislation to provide paid bereavement leave for women suffering pregnancy loss. What prompted you to offer this bill?
Well, thank you so much for your interest in this, Francine, and to talk with me about it. I think most of Pennsylvania at this rate has heard at least a little bit of my story. When I first became a senator, my husband and I tried starting a family. And we had back-to-back pregnancy losses that were really impactful. We were grateful to be able to announce in 2022 that we were expecting a little girl. She came in 2023. And it was those first two experiences that started the ball rolling on this issue, understanding that each pregnancy loss is different and understanding that the grief and the physical time to heal from a pregnancy loss is different for each one. So unfortunately, I've shared this year that about a year ago now, almost to the date, we found out that we had lost yet another pregnancy. And so I say that in a way to say this bill is about acknowledging at least a little bit of time that's needed, because each one of those losses, the time that I needed to physically heal looked different. The time for the emotional, it's still something that can grab me by the throat at any point when I think about it. Not always, but we really wanted to do this to acknowledge both of those pieces. And then also our bill acknowledges that time for the partner is needed. My husband isn't somebody who's going to cry a lot or show a lot of those very big emotions. And, I think there are a lot of people that might have a partner like that, right? And I saw my husband cry and the impact that it had on him. So our bill contemplates 3 days of paid leave to start the grieving process for both the carrying person and the partner. And I think that that's really important. I'm not saying it's enough. I know from my own experience it's not enough. I'm just hoping to get the ball rolling and changing the narrative on what happens with pregnancy loss and why it happens and the experiences that we have with it.
How common is pregnancy loss?
The 1 in 4 pregnancies will end in a loss, and it is likely that we all know somebody, either it's happened to us or we know somebody it's happened to. We're also really expansive in our definition of pregnancy loss because you don't know somebody's story and journey to starting a family. It can look different for each and every one of us. For us, we had the miscarriages, but getting pregnant wasn't an issue. And my doctor said, fertility treatments are not likely something you'll need. I know far too many people that had many miscarriages that turned to fertility treatments. And so failed fertility treatments, the ones that don't work out, are also very emotional. I've talked to people who have shared that could be even more emotional than just a regular miscarriage from trying to conceive naturally. It also contemplates failed adoptions, right? Because that's an emotional trauma as well when you're expecting to bring home a little one or a new person into your life and it doesn't work out the way that you were hoping or planning it would for whatever reason. So just really kind of acknowledging not just the miscarriage part of it, there's the stillbirth part which happens, and then also just that there are different ways that starting a family might occur that could not work out, and you just need a little bit of time to grieve those moments.
Currently, if someone suffers a pregnancy loss, what options do they have to take leave from work?
If they have paid leave, I'm sure they can use that to take that off if that's available to them. But I think it's pretty well known here in Pennsylvania, we do not guarantee paid leave. And I think it's really important if we say that we want to support families, that we support people starting families, that we offer that level of dignity of it's paid leave to grieve the loss of trying to start your family. And what does that look like? So, it really depends on your work situation and whether or not you have that available to you. Some places might be unpaid leave. I think that, like I said, the dignity is really important there in making it paid.
Your bill would provide for 3 days of bereavement loss paid leave. How do you determine what the appropriate amount of time off is?
Like I said, this isn't something that you can put in a book, and not to be graphic, but I will share with this last pregnancy loss, I had a dilation and an extraction, and I was told expect heavy bleeding, heavy period like bleeding thereafter. For that first week after the procedure, I had nothing. And then almost a full week later, it was a Saturday evening, I felt something happening and ran to the bathroom and just felt all of the blood drain out of me. And it all happened all at once in the bathroom. I had called a friend that I'm lucky enough to have that's an OBGYN that could talk me through what was going on and if I needed to go to the hospital and all of those different pieces. But, that looked very different than, what I was expecting. Whereas the first two, it was several days and then I was good, physically anyway. So I don't know that 3 days is enough. I don't know how you determine that. But in the absence of any paid leave of any kind, I think that this is a really important, at least acknowledgement and step forward that we deserve something to be able to grieve, that there is value and dignity in what you're trying to do. And we support you. And we are a village that wants to help make sure that you can start and raise a family how you want to.
Do other states provide leave for pregnancy loss?
In our research, we have found that there are a variety of different ways that some places handle it. There are states where it's kind of already falls under the bereavement leave policies and requirements in those states. Specifically, I believe Illinois provides for unpaid leave specifically around pregnancy loss. So there are a couple of different ways. Oregon as well, I believe, has some context to that, but they also have guaranteed paid leave in that state. So it's works a little bit different than we might see here in Pennsylvania.
What kind of response have you gotten to your proposal?
I have had some bipartisan support, and I think in sharing the pain and dignity of what I've been through and what I'm trying to do for Pennsylvania families. Like I said, 1 in 4, it's not a partisan issue. You hear from people all the time, young and old, their own stories. Happened at work and went back out on the factory floor after it happened. An older woman coming in for a SEPTA pass we do down in the Southeast, and she shared, I heard the senator speak and I had one, and this is the first time I'm really talking about it. So the response has been overwhelming in terms of the connection and that through line that, I'm a working mom. And for me, my first one took place while I was at a meeting at work. I was lucky enough to be able to leave. So, it's been positive, and there has been some interest across the aisle. We continue to work and see if we can build that interest into actual movement on the bill.
Where's your bill in the legislative process?
It's been introduced recently. I don't recall. I believe it may have been assigned to the Labor and Industry Committee. I'd have to double check that.
Senator Amanda Capoletti, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks to Francine for that interview. Now a reminder about On the Issues tomorrow. We'll have 3 more candidates running in November's election for you to meet. Daniel Wasmer, Liberal Party candidate for PA Superior Court at 7 p.m. David Wecht, Democrat for retention on PA Supreme Court at 7:30 p.m. And Christine Donahue, also a Democrat, for retention on PA Supreme Court at 8 p.m. They'll be here on Wednesday evening. That's it for the PCN Capitol Preview. I'm Larry Casper. Thanks for watching.